97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
I love coaching this football team. I love coaching those players in there.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
It is Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. Geoff Mosher is here. Follow him on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL. New podcast dropped this morning. What's going on with Alshon? How will he fit in? Lane Johnson injury report just dropped. We'll get all the insight right now during Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. He, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Mosh, what's up, buddy?
How are we doing, fellas? We made it to Friday.
We did make it to Friday. We are ready to go. It's Eagles-Giants week 2, by the way. Add that little nugget into the mix. And this game actually has a little bit of a meaning because, hey, the Giants win this thing. They are right there. But the Eagles win this thing, and they can really kind of separate themselves from this bunch because these teams are running out of time. And, look, I think most people feel, see if you feel the same way, whoever wins the most division games is going to win this division.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. The way it's so tight, I agree with you. And everybody kind of playing the same schedule. So all the teams that you think the Eagles are going to either lose to or beat, you're probably feeling the same way about those teams regarding the Cowboys, the Giants, and Washington too. So yeah, I would agree with you. Whoever has the best division record, probably going to win the division. That's
probably the way this thing will go. So a big win this week for the Eagles would put them in a pretty good spot. All right, how will they get it done? Let's see. Fletcher Cox did not participate because of an illness, but the likelihood is that he will play on Sunday?
Yeah, I would think so. He was being held out for an illness, not COVID-related. He has, missed practice or things like this before and been able to play. So as long as nothing is, ailing him too bad that he can't get out of bed, I assume he's going to play.
Craig James is out for the game. Not a huge loss there. Also considering that Crayvon LeBlanc looks like he will be back and ready to go. So I guess the other big questions, you got Nate Herbig still on this list, Jack Driscoll on this list, Lane Johnson on this list. I guess Lane Johnson is interesting because if he can't go and Driscoll can play, does Driscoll get the call at right tackle, or is that Jordan Mailata?
I would think for this week, it would be Jordan Mailata. I think Mailata for this week, excuse me, will be your backup swing tackle because he's been playing, because he was starting just a couple of weeks ago, and Driscoll has been out a couple of weeks. And I think the team this year is really focusing more, especially now, on the ramp-up process of getting guys back on the field as opposed to just throwing someone in a spot just because they're healthy. Yes, they played Jalen Reagor twice earlier than expected, but that's after the kid practiced and after he showed to them he could hold up. And he's also a wide receiver. But I do think you heard Doug talk about Lane Johnson and Isaac Seumalo and how they've been limited in their practice at times. He said it's a little misleading. He doesn't want people to think that they're only doing stretching individuals, but they're limited because one of them has been nursing a season-long injury and the other hasn't played since the second week of the season. So, and I'm just making a guess here, but I would think that they've taken it slowly as the week has gone on with Seumalo to try to kind of build him up to be ready for the game, because with all the injuries and all the crazy kind of IR rules this year, I think you have seen guys go on IR, come back, play, go limping right off. I mean, I think that they're trying to do this thing the right way.
So the only player on the 53 not available is Craig James. We just mentioned Lane. You mentioned Isaac. He is not on the 53, so he is not listed on the injury report. I don't know that if Doug gave any nuggets or clues today about Seumalo and whether or not he will be ready to go on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to diagnose what Doug said. I mean, he mentioned how Seumalo has been limited, but he also said that, like I said, it could be misleading. I would think that if Lane Johnson is going to play, and he's been dealing with this thing all year long, then it's hard to think that they're not going to play Seumalo as long as Seumalo is 100% recovered and not feeling any soreness or tightness. Now, his conditioning maybe a little bit of a question. But again, that's why they have these, he's had really 2 weeks with the bye week. I'm sure he was getting his cardio in. I would think if he's ready to play, they will play him. The only guy out being Craig James, is it a big deal? It's not a huge deal, but it kind of is if a starting corner gets hurt, right? Because they're not very deep behind Darius Slay and Avonte Maddox. And you saw against the Cowboys, when Slay came off the field, they had to go all the way down to Michael Jacquet to get in there to play the outside corner role. They really don't want to have to play Crayvon LeBlanc or even Nickel Roby-Coleman outside unless they absolutely have to. But you really don't want to do that against the Giants, who can give you a little bit of size on the perimeter there. They can even put Ingram out there at wide receiver a little bit. So you would like Craig James to be healthy in this situation, but they will have to make do without him.
Another name on this injury report is Alshon Jeffrey. He was a full participant in practice. We kind of hypothetically talked about this all season long, it seemed, anticipating his return. But what is Alshon Jeffrey's role going to be?
You know what? Your guess is as good as mine. Adam and I have talked about this in great detail on the podcast, and we can only really judge it by what happens this weekend. I think this is going to be a very telltale Sunday for Alshon Jeffrey in his future. If he's active, you'd have to think he's going to play. And if he plays a few snaps, maybe 8, 10 snaps, I don't know, whatever the number is, you're going to have to think that that's pretty much the role that they have for him going forward, because Travis Fulgham is entrenched at the X and he is the future. And you've got Rager at the Z and Hightower and Ward. I just don't see a whole lot of room for Alshon Jeffrey to become a full-time starter again, unless they want to pull one of their future pieces off the field. And I don't think they want to do that. But I'm also not convinced that he's going to play. And it's something that we've talked about. And I'll be proven right or wrong on Sunday.
You mean not active for the game, just like inactive?
I think it's a possibility. So we'll have to come see. I've speculated this. I'm not reporting anything. It's just a vibe. I think I talked to you guys on Wednesday about why there is risk on both sides for him even playing. There's risk on the organization side because we know the organization would like to cut ties with him in the offseason, and it won't be nearly as expensive to do so as it was this past offseason. And you can't cut ties with him if he's hurt. So if he gets hurt again, then if you want to cut ties, right, then you got to pay an injury settlement. And they're trying not to pay him any more money. And for Alshon, you're going to be a free agent this offseason, or probably maybe traded, but more likely cut and going into free agency. You know that teams are already kind of leery about how much they're going to spend because the salary cap may be going down. The last thing you want to do if you're Alshon Jeffrey is get hurt over these next 8 games and limp into a tenuous free agency. You want to be healthy, right? You want to show teams that you've lost all this weight, you're athletic, you can go and work out or take a physical for them, and that you're ready to be the Alshon of maybe a year or 2 ago, and you can't do that clearly if you're hurt again. So there's risk in Alshon getting on the field for both him and for the organization.
Now, Doug did say today that we have a plan for him. We need to get through another day of practice first, but he said he's a veteran player. He's been one of our starters, but he did say we have a plan for him. So I kind of read this as, and again, I'm just trying to read the tea leaves here a little bit, that Jeffrey has a package. He's not usurping anybody in the lineup, but there will be some plays that they run for him specifically, 10 to 12.
Yeah, he did say he have a plan, right? And which that would normally kind of counteract what I'm saying. However, we've seen Doug or any coach say one thing and a different thing happens. I believe he also said in the press conference, he's got to talk to Alshon about, what they're going to do. And, again, if Alshon says, yeah, I'm ready to play, but you know what? I'd rather just not, then they have to kind of, navigate around that if that situation were to occur. Again, I'm not reporting it. I'm just simply kind of speculating because I've seen some crazy things happen in this league, and it's been very odd how Alshon they thought was going to be ready for, to go by September, early October, and it's now, mid-November, and he still hasn't played yet.
How big, obviously, if Seumalo plays, okay, and they can get him back, and let's start with that. If Seumalo doesn't play, does that change anything, or do they just throw, does Herbig go to – what happens if Seumalo doesn't play, I guess? That really hasn't been brought up.
Yeah, well, I think it becomes a situation again where Nate Herbig plays left guard and Matt Pryor plays right guard. So again, that's kind of what they've done with him out so far, and when they've been able to use those two guys, and when Pryor was not on the COVID list, he was able to get in there and play, and that's what I think they would do. I think the big question is if Seumalo is going to play. He's not on the 53-man roster right now. He's on an IR. So when he gets activated, what happens? I mean, I think the likeliest guy to go is Brett Toth because they don't really want him playing in games, even though he's had to already. But the Eagles have 10 offensive linemen, I believe, on their 53-man, which is two more than they would normally carry. So, I mean, you got guys like Luke Jariga taking up spots right now. Sua Opeta, I believe, is still on the 53. And these guys with Seumalo back just have no shot at getting on the field. So it'll be interesting to see if one of those guys goes or if there's another, transaction made at a different position.
Miles Sanders returning is obviously huge, but how do you think Boston Scott being a Giants killer, if you will, impacts the way that Doug Peterson might approach this from a running back perspective?
Yeah, I think Giants notwithstanding, Hunter, I think the thing that they really need to do is figure out how to get Boston Scott maximum production in the minimal reps that he's going to have in a game when Miles Sanders is back, because Boston was clearly a productive player while Miles Sanders was out. Not as much as Miles, but productive enough. And obviously the big catch against the Giants. But in those games that Miles Sanders has played, it seems like Scott and Corey Clement just completely disappear. And then when they're called on, there's just really nothing special there. So I feel like Doug's got to dig a little bit deeper into the playbook and into his creativity to figure out ways to keep those guys more productive. I don't know if you can get them more involved. I mean, think about it right now. You got Fulgham do what he's doing. You got Rager back. You're going to have Dallas Goedert back. You have Miles Sanders back. I'm not sitting here saying you got to put the ball in Boston Scott's hands 7 or 8 times a game or even 5 or 6. It may just be 3 or 4, but you've got to – it can't just be a run up the middle. You know what I'm saying? I think you got to figure out a way to get him on the quick stuff and capitalize on his strengths in those minimal snaps that he's going to play.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a great point, is that it seems that when he has Boston all to himself, he has a good plan for him, but he can't figure out what to do with them in limited time. And we talked about this Wednesday. There's no injury designation at all for Miles Sanders. Full participant. He's going to play in the game, obviously, it looks like. But can he carry the load? And I wonder if Doug adds more stuff for Boston with that in mind, is, hey, maybe Miles just isn't ready to give him the workload that I've given him. Yet at the same time, we're saying they got to give more work to Sanders.
I know, right? It's funny because I think like 3 or 4 weeks ago, Doug wished he would have had enough offensive weapons to have to build a nice, well-balanced playbook around. And now it seems like we're talking about guys that he has to incorporate somehow into the game plan and how difficult that might be for him. We saw it earlier that he seemed reluctant to want to play Miles a lot in the fourth quarter early on. Miles missed a lot of training camp, missed the first game of the season. By the way, this is only going to be the second game, I believe, where both Jason Peters and Miles Sanders are playing in the same game, right? Because Miles missed week 1, and then he came back week 2. Jason played, and Jason got hurt at the end of week 3 against the Bengals, Jason Peters. So really just those 2 weeks were Miles Sanders and Jason Peters together. So I thought Jason did a really nice job, especially in run blocking against Dallas on the backside of a lot of those runs. So, and that's an area that Miles likes to cut back into. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. But yeah, I think in general, Doug's got to figure out a way to kind of make these moving pieces work. And that goes back to Alshon. I just don't see how he can have so much of an expanded role or even who knows how many snaps he'll get with him coming back.
I guess if Alshon is healthy, there's a situation, a strong possibility that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is a healthy scratch.
Yeah, that's a good question. So if Alshon would be active, he'd be 1, Fulgham would be 2, Rager would be 3, Ward would be 4, Hightower would be 5. Yeah, Arcega-Whiteside is theoretically 6. I think that and he doesn't really play on special teams, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that there's a chance that might happen. Yeah.
That would be interesting writing on the wall there to see what happens with him in his future. Yeah, go ahead.
Right, and that goes back into it. Like, I know Arcega-Whiteside doesn't play a lot of snaps either on offense, so he's taking up a spot per se that could go to somebody. But are you gonna have Alshon take up a spot here or continue to take a spot and not, and be active when the game plan is really only to get him the ball 5 or 6 times. I mean, you have to be smart about who's on your 53 and who's not because of injuries that happen during the game.
At least Alshon serves a purpose in the. You could use him as a red zone guy, right? I mean, Arcega-Whiteside has Zippo purpose.
Well, that's how we tend to think, right? But I bet you if you talk to the coaches, right, and there is a little bit of truth to this, when they do want to run and go a little heavy up front, they get Arcega-Whiteside on the field, and he has been a good blocker. I feel like I sound like Chip Kelly in the Riley Cooper thing. But, I mean, that's what they use him for. And we've seen on many of Miles Sanders' runs that he has been a good downfield blocker on them. That's an important part of the game that, sometimes we just go, but it is important. So they will have to actually decide on whether they at least want that for a few snaps or the potential of Jeffrey maybe in the red zone for a few snaps.
Fair. I want to get your take on Goedert. He did not have a huge impact against Dallas, but he was out there a lot, so he's seemingly healthy. The Giant linebackers up against Goedert this week. Can Doug Peterson say – because Goedert, I thought in week 1, it looked like he was going to have a breakout year, and, I mean, that seems like almost 2 seasons ago. I can't remember the last time Goedert caught a pass, it feels like. I know he's been hurt, but I feel like they felt that Goedert had more of an impact in the offense than they're getting.
Yeah, he did have an impact against Dallas. I got to admit, it was hard to notice it, but he was really used a lot as an inline blocker. I mean, we know he can block and we know he can catch, but I guess for his first game back, they limited his responsibilities and said, just be a blocker. And they ran the ball really well. When they did decide to run, they ran the ball well. And a lot of that was because of his ability to kind of come across scrimmage, those wham blocks that we talk about all the time. He did an excellent job of sealing off the edge rusher. So he did have an impact in the running game. He just didn't have an impact in the passing game. I tend to think now, 2 weeks later, you have the bye week to get some extra rest and recovery, that he should be kind of ready to go. And the Giants defense is one that you can beat over the middle. They don't have great coverage guys over the interior. So I'd be surprised if Dallas didn't have a good game. I don't know if he's going to have 120 yards and a touchdown, but I wouldn't be afraid of starting him in my fantasy league. I think he could have that kind of potential.
So when you look at this matchup, the Eagles will win this game if blank.
Oh, this is the easiest answer that I can give you.
Outside of Carson Wentz.
Well, I won't relegate it to Carson Wentz, but clearly he's going to be either the protagonist or antagonist of this, and it's turning the ball over. If the Eagles don't turn the ball over, I believe they'll win by at least a touchdown. I really do. I think this has got to be a statement game for them. They get all these offensive weapons back. Their defensive line is basically at full strength as well for the first time this year. They found some stability at linebacker with Singleton and TJ Edwards, and they've got Maddox and Slay back at corner. They're healthy. This team is as healthy as it's been all year long, and it's time to be what people thought you were going to be going in the year. And remember, people thought maybe the defense might take a little step back, but you've got weapons now. You've got, outside of missing Zach Ertz, you still have Goedert. You've got Miles Sanders. You have a Fulgham who nobody knew would be this good. So he's sort of like your Zach Ertz right now. And you've got Goedert, and you can stretch the field with Rager and Hightower. There's really no excuse for this offense to sputter like it has for the all year, but especially the last 2 weeks. I mean, this is the week where you got to play smart football, take high percentage passes, move the chains, get the ball in the end zone. Doug's got to be creative. Carson has to be smart with the football. Can't fumble, can't turn it over, can't give the Giants second chances. Giants fight hard.
They do, and you mentioned Fulgham. I mean, I just, because Bradbury's a pretty good player, and I'm trying to remember back to the game they played last time. I mean, Fulgham had a pretty good game in that game, and if they we had Sal on earlier, and he mentioned why the Giants are a bad match defensively because they have a zone defense, they don't blitz a lot, and that Carson has been having problems reading the zone defenses, that the inaccuracies he's had, problems with the zone, that he's just not finding open receivers. And I'm wondering, hey, you got Bradbury, you're trying to go away from him. Does that kind of take Fulgham out of this game?
Doug did a really good thing against the Giants a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if it got detected, but Fulgham had 73 yards, I think, on 6 catches. So a pretty good game. And his biggest catch, though, if you guys remember, it came on the right side of the field. It was a 40-yard. It was like a corner and up route where he got behind the coverage there and went up the sideline. Then he caught the ball in the middle of the air, did a spin, and then took a hit and kept going up the sideline. It was 40 yards. So he got about 60% of his receiving on that one play, and that was on the opposite side of the field as Bradbury, because Bradbury doesn't trail a whole lot, and he didn't that game. So I thought it was a good job by Doug to at least get Fulgham, his best weapon at the time, moved off of their best corner. And I suspect that he's going to try to do that a little bit this game too, throw a couple of – I'm sure Fulgham will spend most of his time at the X, but I think you'll see Fulgham probably line up slot, probably line up at the Z and just move around. I think that's Doug's kind of mission for the next 8 games with Fulgham, because all of this is so new to Travis, right? And I think that sometimes you see guys get off the hot starts in their, whether they're a rookie or year 2, and then kind of settle back in or regress to the mean where the defense pays attention to them a little more. So I think Doug's really got to make sure that Travis is fully invested every single game and keep the offense lively around him so that the ball is constantly in his hands.
The last thing with the wideouts, I wonder, and I don't know if they've said this inside the organization, or if they feel like they're not getting as much as they hoped from Rieger. Because you already had people who are like, they should have taken X, Y, or Z. I feel like people are already making judgment on Rieger because Jefferson's had – now, like Jerry Jeudy had a big game, but he hasn't been consistent. Ruggs hasn't done nearly as much as people thought. CeeDee Lamb hasn't done as much. So I feel like, the rookie receivers have had big moments, and Rieger – hasn't had a lot of those big moments. Some of it's because of his injured, but when he has played, he has that one catch that everybody remembers in the first game. But has he given them as much as they had hoped?
Well, I think the injuries really are why he has not. It's more that than he's missed so much time because of that surgery that it's been hard. You're right. He had that nice week 1. He got hurt, I think, in week 2, right? I think it came against
the Rams, yeah.
The Rams, yeah. And then he was out for so long. He came back. I think we think differently a little bit about his game against Dallas if he actually caught that ball at the end there, which he should have caught. I know it wasn't perfectly thrown, but he should have caught that. Then that becomes like a 60-yard touchdown. I don't know how long it was. It would have been pretty long, and it would have added to the fact that he had already had a touchdown and a catch out of the backfield in that game. And you would have been like, you really were starting to see more of what you want to see from Jalen Reagor. But that was his first game back. I definitely think these next 8 games is kind of an opportunity to really see what he can do as long as he can stay healthy.
All right. Geoff Mosher, sounds like you like the Eagles.
It's weird. I do. I really like them to win this game because I think they're the better team, the healthier team, and I think they have really good mismatches. The only thing I can never predict, guys, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way, is just, are they going to give the ball away as much as they've been giving up? The unforced errors sometimes that are inexplicable. If they don't do that, they win this game, I think, by 7 to 10 points. If they do that, then all of a sudden it's close, and you let the Giants team that's gaining momentum over the past few weeks stay involved, and then you can have a game like the last time they made up where it was anybody's game there. It was really a Giants game. They had it, and then the Eagles had to come back. But the Giants won last week against Washington. They win this game. They know that they're in first place, so they've got a lot to play for as well. So they can't be taken lightly. I just think the Eagles got to play a smart game.
Tough to beat a team 9 straight times. That's what's up this Sunday right here on 97.3 ESPN. Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds. Don't forget the Inside the Birds pregame show. It starts at 10 a.m. on Sunday. Adam Kaplan, Geoff Mosher, Greg Cosell, Trey Thomas. They break it all down, leading you into the Eagles and the Giants, which you can listen to right here on 97.3 ESPN. You can watch the Inside the Birds pregame show on all social media platforms. Geoff, have a good one, man.
You two fellas have a great weekend.
All right. Geoff Mosher, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.